What's up, everybody? It's Spencer Alessi, and this is the Esports Narrative. What's up, everybody? This is episode 33 of the Esports Narrative, and joining me today is Bill Wagner. He is at Learning Bill on Twitter. He writes and he does social media through his business, Safe Strategies. He got into esports because he loved gaming. He's the type of guy who actually owned an Atari 2600 along with multiple other games growing up. He told me in his bio that he sent over that his first internet experience was with a free AOL CD. Now, I'm 30 years old, so I remember those vaguely coming in the mail, you know, the AOL, the dial-up, and that. So I do remember some of that, but I'm going to let him tell his story a little bit here in a second. And what he told me is he's really passionate, like I am, about storytelling and the stories that need to be told in esports. And he's also a brand authority manager for Payday. Bill, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me tonight, and I appreciate you taking some time for us tonight.
Hey, no problem, Spence. I appreciate your work. You do a lot of good things. I enjoy listening to the people that you talk to, and I think that what you do serves an awesome need that we need, that is very much needed in esports, and providing a voice to as many different aspects as possible. So so being here is fantastic. So as far as me getting into esports, I started writing online back in 2014. I used LinkedIn's free blogging platform, and I just started writing. I lost my job I had spent the past 10 years as the past 10 years as a blackjack dealer. Lost that job, realized I didn't have any actual skills that would serve very well in the current market. This is 2014, of course. And so I figured I had to start somewhere, and I basically had to do my own thing. So I started writing. I'm fascinated by new ideas, technology. So I just started writing, and I just decided I'm just going to do it, because I really got started because where I didn't like, and I figured, if I just did something different than what I had done before, I could get somewhere else that might serve better. So I started a different website, blogging there. It didn't really work out because I didn't know what I was doing. That lasted about a year. I traveled to a couple different events where you could cover new businesses in the startup world, technology wise, and what about it. I got some traction, but it didn't really pay didn't pay very well, and so I started my own thing about a year ago. Got some real traction working down in Vegas for some people. And I've always had a passion for video games in general. Like you said, I'm old enough to have owned the Atari 2600, which is kind of funny. It's funny. It's really funny when I tell people that, it's like, yeah, I played an Atari 2600. I stood in line for Pac-Man. I think we paid like $8 for it back in '83, maybe '82. So and so I played, the Atari 2600. I played the ColecoVision. I played Activision. I played the Super Nintendo. I played the first Nintendo. I watched video games evolve, and I realized about 8 months ago that esports needs storytelling. Esports needs people who know how to communicate well, and not just communicate with gamers. And this is where the opportunity lies. If the younger generation, which is 14 to about 25 right now. If that generation wants esports to work and to be a viable, real thing, not just a bunch of kids sitting in front of their computers, in front of their consoles, and on a Friday night, and you eat a bunch of food and you game for forever and ever, and you stay up till 3 a.m. If they want it to work, if they want it to be seen as something that is a real endeavor that you can get paid a ton of money for, and you can, if you're good, you can get paid a ton of money to do it. You have to communicate across the generations, and that hit home for me. That hit home for me at the very first TwitchCon. So my son graduated from high school in 2016. So fall 2015, he wanted to do a project on streaming, and he was talking about Twitch, and until that point, I had not heard about Twitch. So we found out that, okay, fall 2015, down in California, San Francisco, the very first TwitchCon was going to happen. I said, tell you what, for your Christmas present, I'll take you down there. I'll fly you down there. We'll get the hotel. I'll buy the tickets. We'll do everything. I'll pay for everything. So we went. And it was the most amazing thing I had ever seen. All these people who knew each other online. My son, he follows this one guy. To this day, he still follows this one guy. He got to meet that guy. And that guy knows him, and they have conversed on stream, and it was fascinating to me. I'm just looking around, look at all the people, look at the old people who are seeing this for what it's worth. Look at the young people interact. These are where all the eyeballs are going. TV is pretty much dead. Newspapers are dead. Social media is where it's at, and all the eyeballs are going to streaming services. You're talking Netflix and Hulu, and now Twitch. So I realized that right off the bat. If you want people to see your products, regardless of whether you're Coca-Cola, Budweiser, or you're just starting out, streaming is where it's at. It can be anywhere, but most of the young eyeballs are on Twitch. And so I realized that back in 2015, and then about 8 months ago, I was afforded an opportunity to be on a couple different sites just to interact with some people. I started reaching out to people in the esports world, just talking, hey, I just want to get to know you, understand you, what you do, who you are, how you think, why you do what you do. I connected with a startup called Esports Tickets, and I wrote a post for them on this a site that I'm on that covers startups, and they were thrilled to death. And I did it for free. It's I just want to help out. That's all. I want to offer this to you guys. You tell me your story. I'll tell it for you. Put it on the site. They loved it. We've interacted a couple times since then. And then about 2 months ago, I saw an opportunity to I'll take the next step. And so I reached out to Payday, and I originally reached out to them because they were looking for referees and people to help with social media. I'm like, hey, I can do that. I got some spare time in my own business. I had, as far as my own business goes, I have some clients. I have one in Florida, one in Vegas, a couple locally, and some other stuff that I do. And I'm like, this is a real opportunity to get in on the ground floor of something that could be freaking awesome. And so I went through the interview process, and I just said, looking for some social media. This is what I am. This is what I do. I shared all my links with them. I've written on Medium and for TechCo and on my own site, and a bunch of other places. So we get to the first interview, and we talked back and forth about stuff, and I realized really early that there's a lot of passion in esports, and that's the only way that it's lasted this long. Because I'm looking around at at the business aspect of esports, and I've talked to some people who have seen it from both sides, and it's like nobody really that nobody really knows how to actually consistently uh, 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 profit from it. And I'm like, then there are tons of stories to be told. There are tons of things that we can talk about that are age-old concepts. They're just in a new format. So we just got to talking. First interview went really well. We got to the second interview, and the CEO's there. And we're talking back and forth about stuff. And he goes, I want you to help us with our brand. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Because there's honestly a million ways to go with it. And I was leery at first, because while there's a lot of passion in esports, it's a fairly young world. So there, and this is gonna sound horrible because it sounds like that I'm being mean, but the truth of the matter is there isn't a lot of a maturity. Now that's both good and bad. It's good because there's passion, there's raw energy, and stuff gets done. But there's also a need for some, hey, everybody chill for a minute. Let's think about what's actually going on. Let's not go on Twitter and start throwing things at each other. Let's think about this from a business aspect. Let's think about what sponsors want. What do investors want? How can we set up cash flow? And we just got to talking back and forth. And he said to me, I've looked at your writing. I've looked at your background. Back in 2016, I earned my in 2016 in 2016 I earned my MBA. So as far as that goes, I mean, I had some advanced degrees and I run my own business. And he's like, we need help with the communication aspect of our brand, internal, external, and on top of that, just the fact that he trusted me enough we had talked for maybe 10 minutes and he's already saying, here's what I want you to do. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So we got to talking, and now I'm the brand authority. And what that basically means is I handle a communication. I have some of my own contacts that I've reached out to and made some connections with. And that then goes into the aspect that you want to talk about when it comes to telling stories, because people hate being sold to. So you have to tell them a story that they tell them a story they care about. And it just really boils down to who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, and who's trying to win. And who the good guy and the bad guy are, it changes all the time, because some people think that their guy's the good guy. Some people think that their guy's the good guy. Some people want their guy to be the bad guy, and that's fine too. And it's an interesting thought, because the bad guy or the bad side doesn't have to even be a person. It can be a thing. It can be an imaginary a construct. And often the good guy and the bad guy are the same person, because it's us. We spend our entire lives fighting ourselves, fighting our fears, fighting our doubts, fighting our own self-imposed limitations. When if we would just do it, if we would just do it, there's more joy in doing it and failing and looking back and go, yeah, that kind of sucked, but man, look at all the awesome stuff I learned. There's no good story that starts with, hey, remember that time that we were thinking about doing this thing and then we didn't? Yeah, that was awesome. There's no story that starts like that ever. No story ever goes, remember that time we were almost awesome? No story ever starts that way. No story has ever told that. But the story goes, remember that time that we were going to go to that event and we ended up getting sidetracked and we ended up at this other place and we like met this dude and he was nuts, but he's like, yeah, that was awesome. It's the daring, it's the courage. That's what makes a story. And we spend a lot of time limiting ourselves and listening to our own monsters that are constructs of our own failures, and we don't want to feel bad about ourselves again. So we make up these things. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. You know, I started in the year 2000. I was 27 years old, and I decided, you know, I decided that I love sports and I want to be an umpire. So I started in the year 2000 as an umpire for doing fast pitch softball. 2006, I started doing basketball. 2009, I started doing soccer. Well, now I've been doing softball for 18 years. You know, I've worked from 10-year-olds up to Division 1. You know, I've worked all of those levels. I don't know how many thousands of games that I've done, but man, there are some days when it comes to my knees, I feel it in my knees. But I've been in front of the loudest crowds you can think I've been in gyms where there are no crowds. I've been on TV. I've been in Sports Illustrated. I've been all of these places and done all of these things. And everybody always compliments me on this. And I'm like, and I just sit back and I think, you can do this stuff too. You just can't give up on yourself. You can't walk up to the failure, feel it, and go, oh, that sucks. I don't want to do that again. When you can see on the other side, that's the thing I want right there, and I just have to beat this thing to get that thing that I want. And one of the best things that I've heard said about Tony Robbins. He said, everything that you want is on the other side of fear. Everything that you want is on the other side of fear. So whatever the fear is, fear of speaking in front of groups. I mean, when we're getting ready for this, I told you that I told you that I had a when it comes to talking that I had that I stutter sometimes, and it's easy to spot. But here's the thing: that doesn't matter. It doesn't, because if you let your fears define you, you will always be known as the guy that's afraid to do something. Instead of, yeah, that's the guy that was on TV and he does this and now he writes for this site and does this and does this and does this. You know, and through sheer force of will, I now have like 800. As far as Twitter, I have 800 followers on Twitter. I have 1,700 connections on LinkedIn, and that's just through me putting stuff out there, trying to create value for people. So when it comes to telling a story, you have to connect with people on the emotional level. And the way to cross generations with this is that the feelings are the same. We all want to belong. We all want to feel useful. We all want to be loved. We all want to find some connection. Everybody that I've ever spoken to, who, when I asked them, you got into esports, why? It's the same story. I felt lonely, I was depressed, or I just wanted to be around my friends. And they find a place where they fit in, they're useful, they're good at something, and it doesn't matter the game, it can be any freaking game. I mean, there's been video games and card games forever, but they just wanted to feel useful, and so they were useful and they connected, and everyone shared the experience of they sat down at a video game, and whether you're playing Call of Duty and you think the guy that you're playing against is a bot and that he cheats all the time. Everybody's around you going, yeah, the guy's a bot, man, he cheats, report him. But that's the shared experience. And so when you tell the story, it's the same feelings. You just have to find the connection. And people who are old, need to get over themselves.
So,
so go ahead.
So let me ask you this, real quick. How old are you, Bill?
I turned 45 years old in April.
All right, so you're 45 years old. Definitely
Yes.
not the typical age of an esports fan. And I'm
Nope.
curious, from your perspective, why is it that someone your age should care about esports? And what do you say to someone to bridge that generation gap between the 40-year-olds and the 20-year-olds? How do you bridge that gap? And what do you say to them? And why should someone who is your age care about esports?
People my age, I remember playing the first version of Doom. I played the first version of Doom, and I played it. I played online the first time Doom versus somebody else in college. That is a shared experience that people my age, 40, probably 48, maybe 50, maybe. We can turn to our kids and go, I remember playing Doom online the first time. You're like, you played online? Really? And you can connect with your kids. And that's what I want as a, I want nothing more as a, a father. Nothing, I want nothing more as a father than to be able to connect with my children. I bought, when my kids were little, I bought them all Game Boys and I bought them all Pokemon games. And I played the Pokemon game with them just to be with them and spend time with them to have a shared experience. So we should care because our kids care. And we can teach values through that. We can teach our children on the level that they understand. Yes, it might take some effort on our part to understand what they're doing. But you know what? Technology, don't be scared of it. It's just one of those fears that you have to get over. Everything that you want is on the other side of fear. If you want to connect with your children, but you're afraid of the technology, get over your fear. Let your children teach you. There's tons of stuff on the internet. You can read it. You can figure it out. How cool would it be if you walked into a GameStop and you said, I want to buy a Game Boy because I want to learn how to play Pokemon. And you went to GameStop and you bought a Game Boy and you bought a Pokemon XY or whatever, or Black and White or whatever, and you just learn to play it because your kids love the crap out of it. And now you're connecting with your children, and your children know that you care what they do. And you can use that to your advantage to teach, to help them grow, because our children only respond to us when they know we care. And we care about what they do and who they are. Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely, and I love your passion and your enthusiasm for everything. Really, it's really awesome to see someone who is that passionate about esports and having your background. It's just super cool to see. So I definitely appreciate and respect it. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what's the current state of storytelling in esports? What is it lacking? What is it doing well? And where do you see the opportunity for content creators like you and I to provide cool and interesting and unique and awesome content for, the people listening to this podcast right now?
So right now, as far as content goes, everything's about video, and that's great because YouTube is awesome. YouTube is great. There are a lot of good channels on YouTube when it comes to esports that I personally follow to check out to understand the feeling. What needs to happen is we need people who know how to write. And the reason that we need that is this. When you type something, whether it's Bing or Yahoo or whatever, Google, you're typing words. And the technology does not exist really at this point to be able to search for pictures. Whatever you search for, it's words. So you have to have the right words in the right sequence for people to find you, because the way Twitch works, the way streaming works, the way technology works, everybody has access, so it's all fragmented. Everybody's doing something. There's a trillion websites out there with people who create good stuff, but it's all about finding the eyeballs for that, getting eyeballs to see it. So people who know how to write are in, as far as I'm concerned, are in demand. And it's a skill that's not taught because we're so focused on technology. You can type anything into into a search engine and find anything that you want. But when it comes to a video, when you're making a commercial, you have to have a script because it has to sound right. Yes, it's great to shoot from the hip, and it works once in a while. But the best videos, the best stories have a script to them, because when people read them, they read the script. And if we just talk back and forth, that doesn't have the same emotional build to it. When you tell a good story, you introduce the characters, you make people want to be the character, and they understand the character's conflict and their struggle. You give them something to struggle against. They fail, they succeed, they grow, and that's the story. That's the script. The concept of storytelling is not new. It's been around for thousands of years. Whatever, if you've ever read the Bible or the Quran or any other text, it's a story. Yes, it's scripture and it's spiritual, but it's still a story. You have characters that people care about. You have a conflict. You have struggle. Some people fail. Some people overcome. That's what esports needs.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm one who's a huge proponent in audio, obviously. I'm doing a podcast. How do you feel podcasts play into the storytelling content of the world of esports? And, that being said, video is obviously indexing very well, but yes, I believe that audio is very near in the future of what's going to be, a major industry, transforming technology. I believe it was Google that said either 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 searches done on Google now are done by voice. There's a lot of people searching for things on Alexa with voice. There's a lot of new technologies around that, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on storytelling on audio, and particularly podcast form.
So one of the drawbacks to video is always bandwidth. Watching a video is nice as long as what you're seeing is of decent quality. If it's poor bandwidth, if it's spotty, if it doesn't look good, then you don't like it. The great thing about audio is that voice, in terms of data transfer, doesn't use the same bandwidth as video. So you can listen to a podcast walking down the street. You can listen to a podcast when you're working out in the morning. You can listen to a podcast in bed on your phone. It's very portable. So video eats data. So podcasting is awesome because you don't need if you have a microphone and a computer, you can podcast. Now, granted, you can add pieces to that and you can sound a ton better, adding filters, and you can do things on your computer to make it sound better. But in the end, if you have a good microphone and you have a computer, you can podcast with anybody, anywhere in the world. It's honestly that easy. Video is different. If you want to make high quality video, you have to have a certain camera. Then you have to get it. Then you have to have software to edit it the right way. It has to compile a certain way. There's a lot of things with video that make it very very cumbersome. So podcasting is the new radio. Radio is basically dead because people don't like to listen to commercials. So people are turning to podcasts that are specifically targeted to their needs. There's got to be, I can probably search, and you could too right now. There's got to be 10,000 different podcasts right now for every genre possibly think of: guns and food and cars and esports and blogging and social. I mean, you name it, somebody's probably doing it. You know what I'm saying? So the podcasting's growth comes into play because it's extremely portable.
Now, what do you feel as far as content goes? What do you feel works? Like, there's a couple things that I've noticed that some media outlets are doing, right? So there's people doing highlight replays or hype videos. There's people doing more analytical, game dissection type content. There's people doing like the liquid video that they produce themselves, which is more of a storyline, and it's kind of like I'm the word is escaping me right now, but
sure.
A documentary. It's more like documentary style, where it's actual film and there's kind of character arc and story arc and things like that. What do you think is working well right now, and what do you think, from what you've seen online, what type of content are people seem to be gravitating towards, and what are they liking, and what do you feel in that regard?
What people want and need changes all the time, and it's a direct reflection of their education. I don't like videos that are loud, that have the loud dubstep stuff, but that's just me. I mean, they obviously have their place because people watch them. If people didn't watch them, those types of videos wouldn't be made. But the same person that likes that will also want a breakdown of a certain game. Why did their favorite player do this at a certain time as opposed to this? And those videos are awesome because you can. And the reason why those videos work too is if you've ever listened to if you've ever listened to people talk about sports, they'll say, well, the reason Tom Brady's good is because he has this awesome organization and he best players and best coach. People are like, no, Tom Brady's just good because Tom Brady's good. Well, what do you think? Well, look, it's when you have videos like that and content like that you can break down, you get people to form an opinion. And so you have the flashy stuff that people go, oh, that's nice, yeah. But then they turn back to basically whose side are they on? So if you're into a certain game, and you have players that play a certain way and other players that play a certain way, the best content is where those two sides are just going at it. Because they're like, no, that never works because you can't do this and this and this on this server. Man, those guys in Europe, they always spam this same freaking move. But then someone else will go, well, there's an easy way to beat that. Here, I'll show you. They're like, no, that doesn't work. Well, I just played. And so you get the content and the breakdowns of the people that are passionate and they have opinions. And then that's where you have the good stuff. But you can't have that sort of a deeper breakdown unless you have the deeper breakdown unless you have the stuff that is flashy. So it depends on what you're shooting for. It depends on the audience. One of the discussions that I've had at a payday when we're talking about streamers that we sign up. I'm like, if we want to hold tournaments for a certain game, whether it's COD or CSGO or anything, we got to have a streamer in that game. Because you want to know why? That's where people go to hear about the game. So we have that streamer, announce tournaments. Yeah, we can put stuff on Twitter and we can, put stuff on social media. But streamers are what people see and what people talk to. So if a streamer's doing, if you have somebody who plays COD, but they don't play, they play a certain version of COD. They don't play a Black Ops. They hate Black Ops because the guns are a certain way. Then you don't want that person to really broadcast that, hey, this site's going to have some tournaments for Black Ops. But you want the streamers that are across all the genres, whether they're shooters or real-time strategy or racing or sports games, or whatever the game is. You need to have a streamer in that spot, because that's where the people go and that's where it works. So the answer to what content works is you have to know your audience, and not just think that because your audience will tell you what they want, and it changes a lot. So what content works in one moment may not work in the next, and that's okay, because you get to decide what that, if you want the eyeballs that only want a certain kind of content, fine, that's what you shoot for. But you have to know your audience, and you have to understand how they're doing it and why they're doing it. And it has to do with age and education and their experience with life. And that's where, for my job is to sit back and look at, current events and understanding what somebody who's 15 thinks about, as opposed to somebody who's as opposed to somebody who's older. Someone's 22, 25, 28. They have different, they think differently. So you have to be able to understand your audience, and the content you create has to be there.
Yeah, I really think I'm a big golf fan, and I think the type of content that the Golf Channel and CBS and the networks create around the Masters and these major tournaments, I think is a really interesting model, and I think it's something that's unique to golf in a way because of golf's heritage and its history and the incredible moments at a lot of these historic golf courses. I think the content that's created around major golf events is a unique model that potentially esports could follow as it begins to age. And you could even start telling that stuff now, because I was just looking at something that Anders posted on Twitter today, and it was something about, the best CSGO thread. It was on HLTV. It was a blog post on HLTV, and it talked about, it pretty much named all the old, circa 2000 or 2005 CSGO pros, and I one group caught my eye, and that was Complexity, and Fraud was one of the people that I remember following quite a bit back in the day when Complexity was the dominant CSGO team that they were. Fraud was like a huge name. Like, Fraud was huge in CSGO, and Spawn were two that come to mind from that era. But we can do that now with a lot of that content. I don't know how much of that content, the video or the gameplay, is archived and things like that. I presume there's quite a bit of it, but I think we can pull a lot from the historical events that have already happened. And, League of Legends, as far as, LCS is concerned, I think is only like 6 or 7 years old. So there's that. But as it begins to age, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 years, I think it will be unique for someone to create content that pulls from those archives and is like, okay, in 2005, Counter-Strike Finals, this happened. And then, and it's different and it's difficult, right? Because the teams probably won't be the same. Maybe they will be, but, Optic's been around for a while. Complexity's been around for a while. They're still competing in the same games that they played in originally. So there's going to be some teams that are around for the long haul, especially now that there's a lot of funding behind it. So for me, the content that makes sense is like that golf type content where it's like, the black and white photo of, them playing golf with the wooden clubs and, like the typical like 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s type video, I think would be interesting to have more of in esports. And right now I don't see a ton of it in terms of major broadcasts, right? Like ESL and DreamHack, they'll do stuff from previous events, like the previous year or 2 years or something like that, but never anything from archives. True archives, I think, would be interesting content. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, as I recall, depending on the cable package that you used to be able to get, there was a channel there was a channel put out by ESPN called ESPN Classic, and you could watch like the old World Series and the old NBA Final games. So it's viable, it's doable. It would take. I mean, it's totally doable. It's very doable, and as the population ages, and it's also a really good way to connect with people my age who might be like, I want to, but I don't even freaking know where to start with stuff. Because here's the thing: if you sit and listen to an event, and you listen to the people who are the casters, they're speaking a language that most people my age be like, what the hell were those words that I don't even understand? What are they talking about? His super. What's a super? I don't even understand what a super is. And so there's an opportunity there to talk to not only the generation that is new, but the older generation who's like, I have my kids and my grandkids are loving the crap out of this. I want to spend time with them. How can I understand these words that are being spoken to me? Because when I got started, I got in. I love StarCraft. I've always loved StarCraft. And about 3 years ago, I started watching it really hardcore. And I seriously had to go in and learn all the races, learn the whole sequence of the builds, just to understand what the casters were freaking talking about. Because they would just run off on these tangents. And I'm like, what the heck did he just talk about? So for somebody to watch, whether you're talking uh, 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 League of Legends or Dota or stuff like that, where you have these players running around this gigantic map and they're all shooting each other and they're doing these funny moves, and it's like, well, what are those statues doing? I don't understand what a Baron is. What's a Baron? What the heck is that? And what's a super? And how did he just do what he just did? There's a real opportunity there to take that old content that's maybe 3, 4, 8 years old and go, okay, so this was the game in 2009. Here's the game in 2012. So you can take that story and you can tell a story for old people that works just as well. It's like, oh, I see. And what a lot of old people don't get is when you go overseas to these places and there's these stadiums that hold 200,000 people and all they do is watch people play video games. You're like, how do you do that? Well, they're crazy about it. It's part of their culture. It's not part of the culture for us yet.
So what do you think esports needs to continue to grow and be successful?
First thing, it needs to find some kind of a business model that works, that makes cash. You can have all the passion in the world, but eventually you have to eat. So we gotta find a business.
That's a nice quote. You can say that again, because that's actually really funny.
You can have all the passion in the world, but eventually you have to eat.
I like it.
So esports needs a business model that makes sense and makes money. And And I'm not talking about sponsors giving teams and organizations money so that people will see the brand and then they'll go buy, whether it's Budweiser or Coke or whatever. I'm talking about the esport organization itself creating the content, providing value in such a way that it can consistently a profit. And that's the problem right now. You have these investors, you have people who have tons of money and see the potential, because the potential is there. There would not be this many eyeballs. I mean, you're talking millions worldwide that are into this if there wasn't something here. So people who are investing see it like, okay, this is the next thing, but nobody knows how to actually do it right, because all businesses, and this is a business. Don't get you have Activision and you have all these massive gaming companies. They're doing it because they want to make cash, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Making money is just fine. But like I said, you can have all the passion in the world, but eventually you have to eat. So how do we make money? How do these esports organizations make a profit? You have to make a profit. So once that gets figured out, that goes hand in hand with we have to treat the people who are serious about it, the people who are good about it, the people who play these games well. And there are people, men and women all across this world that dedicate their lives to being good at, whether it's StarCraft or they're playing a COD or Street Fighter. It doesn't matter. They're good. They're freaking good, and they're good at it because that's all they do. And we need to tell those stories. I went to this past July. I went to Evo, and Evo is nuts. Evo's nuts. Anyway, so there's several players that are really awesome. You have Daigo. You have Punk. You have Jay Wong. You have all these guys that are really freaking awesome, and they all have stories behind it. And one of the stories that caught my eye was a Punk. I watched a video on YouTube, and they were talking about Punk, and his parents said, same basic story. He was an outcast. He didn't fit in with a lot of kids in school. He had some issues with learning, but he figured out he can play video games and he can be good at it. And he came from nothing. His parents spent money they didn't have to get him a console so he could learn to play Street Fighter. And now he's freaking awesome at it. He goes to these things. He placed second. He was on that massive stage. Thousands of people around him screaming and yelling for him. And he came from nothing, and look at where he's at. And he has all these fans and all these people that love the crap out of him, and they look up to him, and he's their hero. They love Punk. Punk is awesome. They're all talking about Punk, and he felt so bad when he placed second. Oh, I let everybody down. Oh, I'm sorry. And they're like, no, man, you're awesome. And that's the story that has to be told. Where you come from, the struggle, the character. Why do I care about this person? Their struggle, how they overcome, their growth, and that's the story that has to be told. So you combine the business aspect, have to make a profit, with the stories, with the marketing, having the characters, and it's the same in football, baseball, basketball. It's the same story. You work hard. Some people have the talent. Some people do it one way. Some people do it another, and that's what esports needs. And they need people like you to be able to tell that story. To get the athletes on there to talk about, hey, when I was 9, I was living with my mom. It was just the two of us, and we got thrown out of our house, and I went to stay at a friend's house for a while, and he and he had an Xbox, and I one day we were just goofing off and playing Street Fighter or a Halo, and here I am. I started at 9, and now I'm 17 years old, and I'm doing this for a living. That's an awesome story. Just the fact that video games, and it doesn't matter the sport, can save lives. I can't tell you the number of stories, people from inner cities who said, I played football. If it wasn't for football, I'd be dead. Football provided structure, provided me a reason to get up in the morning, a reason to go to school, a reason to work out, a reason to eat right. And now, because of structure, because of football, I can do anything. It's the same thing.
Yeah, that's super awesome, and I definitely agree. I think it's exactly what you just alluded to. There's kids who found sports, and because of it, they found a means to express themselves and break free from the drugs or the gangs or the getting into trouble kind of thing. So I definitely agree with you in that. Now, we'll end the show with this last question, and it's how, as storytellers, how do you make money as a storyteller? How do you make money with your stories?
You first have to find you first have to find the story. Now, and the important thing that people forget about storytelling is that it's not about the person who is writing the story. That's where a lot of people fall short, is that when you tell the story, you have to make sure that it's about the character. I see a lot of people writing for their own vanity. So you have to make the story about the character. Then you have to write well. You have to understand how to write to you have to understand how to connect with a certain audience. And then you just have to keep doing it. I've been blogging online for over 3 years. I've written probably 120 different posts. And I honestly don't feel like I got really good at it until about, 8 months ago. Because I kept on thinking of thinking of different formats. Is it too long? Is it too short? And you just have to keep doing it. And you have to keep putting yourself out there and taking the risk. Because I've written horrible pieces of garbage. I've written blog posts that people go, "What the heck is this pile of crap?" I'm like, "You're right. It was a pile of crap. Why did I even try?" But I've also gotten to the point where, I've told some really powerful stories for people that have then turned into contacts that have now turned in. So the sad part about being a writer and being a content creator is that everybody thinks that they can do your job. Everybody does. Everybody thinks that they can write until they actually try it. So you just have to grind it out. You have to work every day at what you do. You have to get better every day at what you do. And there were times, and this is God's honor, I thought, I am never going to do anything with this. Nobody gives a darn about what I have to say. Nobody gives a darn about these people that I write about. Nobody gives a darn about anything that I have to say. I'm an over the hill, washed up, burned out dad who all I know how to do is, I'd sit on my front porch and be angry all the time. But the world is full of people, like I said at the beginning. The world is full of people that sit on their front porch, and they sit in their rooms and they're just mad about that they didn't get a fair shake, and life isn't fair. And you're like, I agree, life is inherently unfair. But no good story, like I said, no good story ever starts with, "Remember that time that I was almost awesome?" No good story starts that way. So you have to tell your own story by just keep going, keep moving forward, and it will hit. Eventually, it will hit. And for me, if this thing is, I mean, when it comes to my current position with a payday, and we're struggling like everybody else is struggling. Nobody knows how to make any money yet, but we have a bunch of great people. We all care. We're all moving in the same direction. And when this hits and we get 500 trillion views in a year, then it'll be worth it. But you have to keep moving, and you can't let a simple argument or a failure get in your way as long as you know what you want to do. Because in the end, the only thing that makes a difference in the world is a group of people who are committed to a goal. That group can be small, that group can be big. That's the only thing that has ever changed the world. It's a bunch of people getting together and going, we're going that way together. Do you want to come with us? No? Okay, fine. And next thing you know, it starts off as a couple of guys streaming in the 90s, and then it turns into the early 2000s, turns into the early 2000s, where you have Justin TV. Then Justin TV turns into Twitch, and then Twitch in 2009 gets bought for an insane amount of money, and now you have Twitch, and it's this awesome thing. But when they started it, it wasn't called Twitch, and they weren't even thinking about Twitch. But now it's Twitch. So like I said, you just have to keep going. You have to figure out what matters. You have to find something that at least somewhat pays you, so you can eat. So you can eat and stuff. But we don't need as people don't need to have all the things. People have this thing where they have to have all these things to exist, and in reality, you don't. If you're passionate, if you're focused, if you care, you just need a place to sleep, something to eat, something to do to get paid, and you can do anything you freaking want. Anything.
Awesome. That is some awesome motivation and really inspiring words, honestly. It's encouraging to hear, and I think it'll be encouraging for a lot of people to hear what you have shared there and throughout the whole episode. So I appreciate you sharing with us, and I know there's tons more topics we can talk about.
Yes.
And we'll have to do this again sometime and pick out some more detailed topics. And we'd like to hear from you, listeners, the fans, the audience of the podcast. If there's a specific topic or subject you think would be interesting to cover, if you have any ideas for specific guests or like something like that you think would be good to bring on to talk about it, let us know. Let me know, and we'll talk about it. Or if there's something more that you want me to ask Bill, if there's more conversation pieces that you think I could go into with Bill, let me know, and we'll have to have him back on the show again. And I think that would be super cool.
Hey, man, this is excellent. I appreciate the time, man. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And with that, I just want to remind everyone that if this all goes as planned, this show is just the beginning. Hey, guys, real quick before you go, I just want to say thanks for listening and supporting the show. It really means a lot to me that you like it, and I hope that if you found some value from this podcast, that you'll share it on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook, anywhere that you have a social media presence. I would love it if you would just share it with 3 to 4 people that might be interested in it. It would absolutely mean the world to me. It would help me get my name out there, help me get the podcast out there. I do this solely for the love of esports and for the love of getting to know people and hearing the stories of esports that I think are so awesome. So please, if you got value from this, if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone who you think might like it. And with that, I will see you next time. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.